Well, buenos dias, and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Heavyweights podcast. I'm Ashton Hines, one half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. I'm here with Tavis Westbrook, the other half of the Real Estate Heavyweights. Our math is very simple, and we're coming to you right after doing an interview with a guy named Joel Miller. His interview will be coming up soon. He wrote a book about real estate investing and rental properties. And so that was a cool experience because that was our first national guest. We've been hit up several times by people. Robert Kiyosaki, just leave us alone, man. Jeez, busy over here. No, we've had several people reach out, and not that we don't want to participate, but it's like we don't really know. Well, it's about Dallas. The people that we're doing, stuff about Dallas, and we get hit up by some really random, like, oh, they'd be perfect for you. And you look at their profile, you're like, I don't know that they would be perfect for us.
Well, I think so. What resonated with me was, he wrote a book. I mean, obviously, a big part of their promotion was promoting this book. But ultimately, he wrote the book, and he's 71 years old, and his son is the same age as Luke and Landon, right? So Landon just turned 20. I think he said his son was like 19 and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So, same time frame. Obviously had us on, 26 years, I guess, is how much older he is than
Right.
us. So I can't imagine having kids at 50 years old, but ultimately, he wrote this book with the mindset that he wanted to leave his kid with, basically a map, a roadmap to building wealth in real estate. And so it's very raw and very to the point, and gets into the nitty gritty. And it's not just all rainbows and sunshine, sunshine.
Stories
it's actually. And it's already helped his son. I mean, his son's living at home, but he bought his second rental property here.
That's crazy.
Since he's graduated high school.
He bought a rental house right after he graduated high school, and now he's already got another one. So he's got
it's amazing
something
stuff.
figured out.
Yeah, so you guys check it out when this episode comes out. Check it out and go check out his book. I think it'd be a great one to add to your portfolio. And as he said, it's kind of like if any of you guys are listening ever, read the MREA book, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book by Gary Keller with Keller Williams. Very similar to that. It seems kind of like almost a workbook that you can go in and out of and go back and find your place. Not something you necessarily just read one time, put it on the shelf and say it was a good book. So it looks like it's something that you can be interactive with.
If you were going to write a book, would it be more nitty gritty how to, where you finally disclose your favorite colors that you use on every flip, or would it be more stories from your journey in real estate?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I haven't ever thought about that. It's funny. We joke around. Tabitha's life, my life, our family, our experiences in life in general. There's a lot of different things that are, I think, are very unique in a way that could go into compiling a book. We made running jokes about, Tabitha. She's got a crazy, unbelievable story on some things I won't get into fully, but just in her journey. For where she started as a very young age, and where she is today is pretty amazing.
So, you guys have both persevered through some pretty crazy stuff, and the fact that you've come out as good as you have.
I don't know if you knew. I don't know if you knew this. Maybe you did. But part of it, which she's told the story, so I don't feel out of line to say it, but. And we're going to put it out there for millions of people to hear.
Millions. And I can edit it out.
When Tabitha was very young, she was like 2 years old. Her biological dad basically kidnapped her and took her to Greece and cut her hair, made her look like a boy, and basically disappeared with her in Greece, which is where her biological dad was from. And her mom went over there, didn't speak the language, to go find her, and ultimately found her and brought her back to the
Incredible.
States. But yeah, so
Yeah, she told me that story. I don't know, maybe a month or two ago. And I was like, "What?" I was like,
yeah.
that's
And she just
insane.
says it like, yeah, that's what happened. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
it's kind of wild, but it's
yeah,
things that movies are made out of, right? So
no joke. I mean, yeah, but between her story of that and your story of leaving home so early and kind of making your own way, and yeah, y'all could write a great book or have a really cool YouTube video,
yeah.
or
Well,
luckily we have the podcast to tell your stories, and you have
it
that.
was it was bizarre to me. Like I don't know, had an epiphany like a couple of days ago, thinking, man, I'm just turned 45 and didn't know or meet any of my biological dad's family until I was the age of 44, right? So
Like 6 months
um
ago.
yeah. So it's kind of crazy to think about in that sense, right? It's like, it's just wild to think 44 years. It took 44 years to, you know, make any connections in that world,
Yeah.
So it's
Well, I
wild.
mean, it speaks a lot to, you see a lot of athletes and entertainers that have these stories where they come out of pretty dire situations, and you have this deep down either desire to get out of that or to never go back to that, or whatever that is that you just can't replicate. And I very much am blessed to have grown up in a loving family with mom and dad. They showed up to all the baseball games and took me to church all the time, and like did a lot of awesome things. And so I definitely wouldn't go back and trade that just so I could have a deep seated motivation to do more, but everybody
Sure.
has their things that they have to kind of work through. And, there actually is I've heard people talk about where it's at a certain level, it's difficult the older you get when you're comfortable. You have a certain level of comfort that's hard to break out of. It's like,
Yeah.
well, why upset that? Why tip over the apple cart? Dated reference. But I mean, why do sometimes it's hard to get up in the morning and try extra hard when things are pretty good. And so everyone
Yeah.
has an
Well,
interesting journey, but y'all's story is extra incredible.
well, and it's something too, and I love all my family, I love all of Tabitha's family as well. But it's when you come from a big family with myself having 7 siblings, Tabitha having 6 sisters, and all different walks of life, all different things, but similar backgrounds, right? We all had kind of disrupted things that happened in our life along the way, and it it's mindset. It boils down to mindset, and it's
Yep.
very challenging for me with siblings in mind to have conversations sometimes because they might put me at a different level or think that I don't get where they're coming from or I don't get what's going on in their world right now, and it's very challenging and upsetting in a way that you have to believe in yourself, you have to find it, and you have to pull yourself up, and you have to you're your biggest fan and your worst enemy at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to figure out how to push through those barriers and things that are happening in your life that you can't control, and figure out what you can control and take it day by day and move forward in the right direction, whatever that may be that you want to achieve. You're the only one that can make that impact and make that difference, and it's tough to um it's
Yeah, the
tough to
quote
teach
the
that.
quote that I have on my computer is, and I don't know who said it, and I'm going to butcher it, but change happens when the pain of where you are is greater than the pain of doing something different. And you know, whether that's a pain that you can kind of amplify. And I know Michael Jordan used to just completely amplify every little bitty comment and every little bitty slight that someone would do to him. In his mind, it just magnified, and they would be, most people would be like, dude, what are you so upset about? But he used that as fuel to just get better and better and better. And then there's some people that have legitimate things that they're fighting against. But however it is, you have to internalize that pain of where you are, and you have to then be open to a path of change. And taking that step towards change is difficult, but it's just not going to happen until where you are is just too painful. And I think some people just get comfortable with living miserable lives. It's like, we look at it and you're like, dude, what are you doing with your day?
Mm-hmm.
And are you like, this is what you want, sitting around and, being miserable and being depressed and feeling sorry for yourself. Like, this doesn't seem like much of a life, but there's something about that still isn't painful enough to make them want to change. Like, if the house was on fire, you would leave.
Yeah.
If someone put a bag over your head, you'd try to get it off so you could breathe. At some point, there is some level of like, I got to do something about this. But if you're in life and you're not really happy with where you are, but every day looks pretty similar, then there's just something about that you're either comfortable with, or the pain just isn't great enough.
Right.
And so, yeah, like that mindset shift and trying to, and I will say this comes back to being around people that want more for themselves and more for you. Sometimes my day consists of looking at other people and being like, yeah, that's cool. I want that. Like, spending time out at the lake and be like, man, that's pretty nice. I know this isn't free.
Yeah.
And this is, I went to some friend's lake house this last weekend, and on the Inks, it's beautiful. You've got a great setup, and like, man, this would be cool. There's some certain things about this, so sometimes it's looking at other people, but then sometimes it's having people around you that believe in you more than you do that day. And they're like, dude, let's go. You got this. You got this.
100%.
And so it's that balance.
It's so easy to look at other people too and just go, man, that's, it's a different caliber. That's a different equation.
Or it must be nice. He's got lucky.
Yeah, I don't, I can't relate to them, right? That's a different, that's a different world, or they grew up a different way, or they did this, or they're at a different level that I'll never get to. But, that's those limited beliefs, in a way. And when you compare yourself to somebody else, it's like, what's that corny quote about, comparison is the thief
of joy,
the thief of joy. Right. And like, you have to be able to measure what you're doing and where you were yesterday, where you are today, and set these goals, and little by little make progress in the right direction. And, don't forget to pat yourself on the back for what you've achieved so far. And it's challenging. I mean, look, I struggle with health. I struggle with losing weight, and it's something I've been dealing with for a very long time. And, it's challenging. I think a lot of it has to do with metabolism, because I feel like, overall, I'm pretty aware of like what I'm eating and what I'm putting in my body, and, calorie intake and things like that, and very cautious and aware. But then again, it just doesn't excite me as much as, as doing business, as real estate, so I prioritize, business in a lot of cases, versus, taking care of myself and the gym, right. And going to the gym, and I go in and out of phases, but I have to be aware of what I'm doing, and challenging myself in that sense, then trying to compare it to somebody else, you know, and that's ultimately like what you have to be aware of, is just like your own self journey, and being aware of that. And it's, like I said, it's so easy to like go in your comfort zone and be around other people that are in a similar, situation, than challenge yourself to say, how do I get an accountability partner? How do I get better?
That's kind of why I like Dr. Aaron Roberts. He's super fit, special forces guy. He doesn't like throw it all over you that he's that, but I mean, it's kind of hard to not notice. And it's like, you eat a lunch with him. You're like, nah, I wouldn't order that. Like, he's pretty blunt. Like, what are you doing? So I'm like, I need to hang out with you a few more times a week, just kind of like reset my reasonable meter, and like, he'll text me. It's like, hey, how are you doing with your walking? And so I think, it comes down to, change doesn't happen until the pain of where you are is greater than the change, the pain of change, and surrounding yourself with people that are different and that want, or want more for themselves and want more from you. And I think both of us could probably benefit that. Like the fittest I've ever been is when I went to the boxing gym for 2 years and I did my boxing match. It's like I was around people all day that wanted more for themselves. And then I had a coach that I hired that wanted more for me because I was paying him. But I mean, that was the relationship. And he spoke
that was his job to engage on what you wanted.
Yeah.
And then hold you accountable to the goals you set. Right. I mean, that's the benefit of a coach in anything that you do. If you hire a coach, their job is to hold you accountable and, challenge you. And when it gets tougher, they're going to make it, rewarding, right? In that sense. And when it gets easy, they're going to make it more challenging. So, yeah.
So we all have our things we're working on. We all have our journeys. But that being said, is from a friendship, real estate perspective, all that, you guys have done awesome. We're working on the health thing. Maybe that's our challenge for this next year, is to get really serious about putting ourselves around people that, we need to pair up with the DFW podcast that talks about real estate. That's like the health nuts. Maybe it's like Brian Force or one of those guys that looks like a model that happens to do real estate. Like, what do you do all day? Right. But I mean, it's all right. I do enjoy cooking and all that stuff too. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about our weeks. I'm getting really busy and I'm happy about it. I got a lot of lines in the water. Started working with Rome, our home property management group. I have 4 listings with them right now, lease listings. And I had a showing the other day. I got another one. I have another one today. So that's been really cool. I got a listing coming online today over in Garland from my investor. That's progressing, and that's been fun to watch them finish up their project. I got off the phone yesterday with a loyal listener, Pastor Rob Shields, who, super cool story. I want to have him on the podcast, so I won't ruin everything. But I did not know him until about a year and a half ago, and a friend said, "Hey, I want you to meet Rob." I sent him your podcast. He's getting started in real estate investing. He listens to you guys. And so we met through the podcast, and we keep in touch.
That put us together?
Jenny.
Else? Jenny. Okay.
Yeah. And we've had lunch. Tavis has met him. We've had lunch. Well, he's about to pick up his 4th flip. And so
that's awesome.
He's done amazingly well. And I think there's a chance that I'm going to get to work with him as a listing agent on a project coming up. So kind of neat full circle thing there. I'm excited. I got a chance to, I did a big tax. I did a lot of tax information for people this year in my neighborhood. And I got a call the other day on that. Like, hey, you sent us some tax information. We're thinking about selling, could you come by and have talk to us about selling our house? So I'm trying to set that up. So yeah, just a lot of lines in the water, really trying.
Did you set that appointment yet, or
they're ghosting me? No, I did email them.
Really?
Well, no, I don't know that they're ghosting me. I emailed them and they haven't set up a time. So I don't think that they would have reached out cold and then just completely ignore me. But the holiday weekend, I think they had family and stuff in. But no, we haven't nailed down the time yet. But I'm confident that we'll get something. They're right down the street.
But you're communicating. Mm-hmm. You're in communication with them. You just haven't set the timing.
Correctamundo.
So I mean,
we got all that. So
I'm super stoked and excited for you because this is where that grind and following procedure and patience pays off, right? And like you said lines in the water. It sounded like you said lions in the water, but
sorry.
But I say irons in the fire is where I go with that. But I mean, you've got a lot of things that are, that you've put in the work, you're put in the process, you're putting, another way to say it is you're building the funnel, right? And you're putting all these things inside the funnel, and eventually, things start dripping out of the funnel, and usually it's one at a time. But as long as that funnel is constantly filled, then that's where you start building that pipeline of business to be consistent and grow. And, that's where the trajectory of real estate and doing sales from, facilitating other clients, doing, sales and purchases and leases and investments, start paying off, right? When that funnel gets full, and then things start trickling out for you, and, you just consistently fill that funnel, and then, you get this pipeline that doesn't end, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in the past, you've seen where you've put in some efforts, and, you put one thing in the funnel, one thing comes out, and you do that deal, and then one thing goes in the funnel, one thing goes out, but the
Right.
funnel stays empty, and it takes a long time to start filling that funnel again.
Yeah.
So you're seeing the fruits of your labor, which is exciting.
Yep. Definitely exciting. Now I'm like, dude, I'm super conscious about this tooth. I feel like I need to, like, I just keep staring at myself in the video. I feel like I need to explain to our audio listeners that I had a tooth removed, and
I don't see it right now. So, it's funny because,
I mean,
even last week, I think we recorded and I saw it, but you didn't say anything.
I just don't want people thinking that things just aren't going well for this guy. He's losing his teeth. I had a tooth removed,
Ashton,
and it's like a 6-month process.
Ashton
and
is not doing, meth.
So I'm not on the meth.
Not doing crystal meth.
No, I mean, it's like, it's a 6-month process. Like, okay, let this heal, come back in, wait, do this thing. And they gave me a little fake thing, and it just doesn't fit right. So I've got to go back in and get them to do it. And this is what the hockey, I feel like either people think that I have a meth problem, or maybe I'm the heaviest hockey player they've ever met, because this is sort of the look of some of the hockey players. So I'm going to lean into I just need to start wearing hockey gear around.
Your heavyweights, or your boxer, one of the two.
Both fairly unbelievable. The hockey player or boxer.
You know what's wild is how much a difference that your teeth, like having a full set of teeth, makes a person look different. Like if you have teeth or no teeth, like it's a drastically different, persona of a person, or missing a couple teeth. Like,
I feel
completely
like
changes who you are as an impression.
Working with older people forever. Oh yeah. Working with older people nothing will trip you out more than having a patient that you walk in one day and they're, full teeth, whatever. Next day, no teeth or whatever. It's like, they can go, that changes your look so much. And their confidence goes to zero, next to zero, when they're embarrassed that they, for whatever reason, they lost their teeth and, the trash yesterday or whatever happened. They're not wearing it. So anyway, enough denture talk for the day. Why don't we talk about a little bit of news?
Let's do it.
So, all right, not any huge revelation here, but it does say that, rentals, even out in the suburbs, are really taking off, because the affordability, the issues with affordability are real. And so Dallas Morning News talking about how more and more families are renting, even that these are people that would normally be buying homes. They're not trying to find small apartments, or, these are 4 or 5 member families, and they're just opting for the rental life for a while. And, having worked with the property management group, there's some really nice houses for rent out there. Having owned a house now for a long time, I do enjoy the idea that you can kind of alter things and paint a room. And, if I wanted to really do a project, I can do that. And so maybe that just kind of goes away after a while when you rent, and there's some benefits that come with it. You're like, hey, it's kind of nice. I can call someone to change, fix the plumbing or do whatever. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that I could settle into doing rental long term, especially in a house. If I was in a condo or something that had a lot of amenities that just don't come with home ownership, maybe. So I don't know if a lot of these people will just like kind of settle into this idea and be like, yep, this is it. Because I know last week we talked about Europe. The percentage of people that rent in Europe is way higher than the United States. And there's another article that says that investors are picking up a higher percentage of homes this year than in the past. That I think typically it's around 16%. This year it's 25%. So picking up a lot of homes because there's more depressed pricing because there's sellers that really need to sell. They have cash on the sidelines. They're coming in, picking up these houses. So is this sort of the shift that where more and more people are renting, or will people go backwards? I don't know. I don't know if would you ever be able to rent long term if that was this home ownership and the idea of doing what you want with your house override some finances sometimes to be like, well, we need to go rent.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some pros and cons, right, from that side of it. I think the pros, if you're a tenant, all you really got to worry about is that whatever your rent is, right, which typically includes HOA fees and everything else. Whatever that base rent is what you pay.
Yeah.
And then you pay utilities. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
And as far as like house maintenance goes, I mean, that falls back on the landlord, right? So if there's an AC that goes out, or a water heater that goes out, or a garage door that doesn't open, or you got a roof issue, or you have a busted irrigation pipe, things like that, just general maintenance things that go on with the property, you may or may not have to pay somebody to mow depending on your lease structure.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of surprises that come out of it. When you're a homeowner, there's surprises that happen. You need to make sure you have reserves, because when that AC goes out, you don't want to be one of those people that gets sucked into some stupid amount of AC, cost. Like the average AC system for me to replace on like a 3 to 5 ton unit is roughly $7,500 to $9,500, right? If you go through like Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, you're seeing these systems going for $20,000 plus. I mean, $25,000 for an AC system, and they tell you, great, if you want to do it. And there's a lot of big name brand AC companies out there, and they'll charge you this, and then they allow you to finance it. Well, they finance it and they put a lien against your house, so it has to be paid off before you close. But I mean, you're doubling or tripling the cost, the expense for paying something like that, because you don't have the cash reserves to pay for it. So, there's a lot of things that come along with that. And if you have a pool, you got pool maintenance and pool pumps and, things like that go wrong throughout the year. Fortunately for myself, it's kind of like clockwork, because, I have all the trades. And so when little things go wrong at my house, I just make a phone call to one of my trades and go, hey, when you get a chance, stop by. I got this going on.
Right.
And so it works pretty smoothly. But in a situation where you could, like, for instance, if Tabitha and I were, let's just say that hypothetically she had an opportunity to go work in London or something.
Yeah.
We would definitely rent something. I think you go over there and you rent. I mean, there's no reason to buy anything. In that sense, I think that, even if we wanted to at some point just say, hey, we're going to go move downtown, okay, let's go find something cool downtown. And here's another thing. Matt Aycock brought this up, and I think we talked about this before. He's living in a place now, I think, paying less than $3,000 a month. And
townhome? Is he in a townhome?
He's in a townhome.
Okay, yeah.
And I think the townhomes are selling in the mid fives. So if you do the math on that, the amount of money it's going to cost you to put down, plus the monthly, expenses with principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, exceeds what he pays in rent. So he's like, why would I buy something and put a bunch of money down if that average of a $500,000 home is probably going to cost you $40,000 at minimum, between down payment, tax, your minimum down payment plus your closing costs. So it's going to cost you $50,000 cash plus your monthly payments, to go into that, versus you pay 2 or 3 months down, deposit to start, and then your monthly rent. It just when you look at the math to it, doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, investment wise, the majority of people out there that haven't bought their first home yet, their net worth is zero. So the benefit of owning a home helps build
forces you
some
to
net
build
worth,
equity. Mm-hmm.
even though your net worth is in your homestead. So like I have this with, these conversation with some of my siblings, that their net worth is only their equity in their house. And if they expose that, or they sell their home and they pull that equity out, then what?
Yeah.
Then where do they go from there? Because now you're taking away your
Bitcoin.
housing, and your housing to go somewhere else at where they're locked in for their payments now. The average rent exceeds, because they've been in their home for 20 years. So rents are more expensive than what they pay in their mortgage.
Yeah.
And so then you're kind of stuck. Then you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you have a net worth, it's equity in your house, but now it's going to cost you, money to rent somewhere. So you're tapping into that equity now to pay back. If you don't have additional income streams coming in, or you're short on cash flow, that can be challenging.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at another story here nearby us. Huge development up there, the Frisco Fields West.
Fields.
So this is part of the Frisco PGA, Universal, University of North Texas has a thing up there. Let's see. It says they just secured a $425 million construction loan. I believe this is a $2 billion or $3 billion overall development. There's a ton of neighborhoods, shopping, office parks. So I've talked about wanting to interview the mayor of Frisco at some point. The other person that would be amazing to interview is the guy. What is his last name? Is Karahan. He's the guy who developed the Legacy East and West, and I want Femhi Kaharan. That's his name. So. Okay. I think I've read before that Legacy East, the original Legacy little shopping, not little, but, right there off of Legacy, east of the tollway, was his first development. And it's like amazing. We used to go down there and have pizza, and there really wasn't a lot of entertainment there, but it was really, really cool. There's a lot of restaurants and shops and that sort of thing. Well, then they developed Legacy West right across the tollway, and it was even better. And there's all sorts of high-end stores, and it's this really cool walking street, not blocked off, but it's beautiful, and great restaurants, great shopping. And that's where Legacy Hall is. And that's where Haywire, one of my favorite restaurants, is down there. So that whole Legacy West. Well, then they have a lot of office buildings down there. Well, he's a part of this Frisco development. And it says that the Singapore company is also investing that, and they came in and they bought, it says, in May, a joint venture including Indiana-based Kite Realty Group and GIC, a Singapore company, acquired Legacy West, another Karahan project, for $785 million. The project was 98% leased. And I've had a hard time finding out like how much they built it for, but it'd be really cool to talk with this guy. My understanding is that Legacy East was one of his very first developments, hit it out of the park. Legacy West, even a bigger success. Now he's being tapped for this Frisco Fields, which is billions of dollars. But I mean, all of these developments have happened since I've basically lived here. I mean, 12, 13 years.
What's interesting too is they've had this life cycle, of certain restaurants and certain department stores and stuff that, were in there originally and didn't make it, but then other ones have come in, and other ones that do well than others. So it's interesting to kind of see it come together. But I don't know what it is that makes Legacy West just have such a different feel. Kind of has to me like a California vibe to it a little bit. Or if you've ever been to the Domain in Austin,
Domain,
very, very similar to that concept. Versus the Legacy East side has more of a tree-lined streets and shaded communities, and that almost has like a
East Coast brownstone-y type.
A little bit, yeah. It has more of that East Coast kind of vibe, a little bit like an old historic downtown or something like you would find in Harlem or something like that. It kind of has that
Well,
a little
Legacy
bit of
East
that
has
vibe to it.
there's probably 6 lanes that actually separate that go right down the middle. It's an actual road. It's harder to walk back and forth. Legacy West, they developed it. One, the buildings are taller.
Kind of the main strip.
You have that
Yeah.
main little strip, and it's kind of it's fun to just go sit there and have a drink or an ice cream and watch really nice cars drive back and forth, and people you can tell sort of run the strip and take their cars back and forth. And you can see some really nice cars through there, and of course they have some just really high end shopping. So the people watching down there is fun, and the restaurant mix down there is fun. The thing that they don't have that I've always been curious about, which I feel like Grandscape has done a good job of, just kind of the entertainment factor. They don't have like a, for lack of a better reference point, like a Dave and Buster's or a,
they don't have any kid zone place.
Yeah. Or even just like a place to go do something other than eat and shop. And there's no putt-putt. There's no Cosm or whatever all the Grandscape has. It's
there's not any like family entertainment versus, you know, Grandscape's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Bringing those elements in. Obviously just the spacing, you know, for
It's
the
different.
You know, the development spacing is much more spread out and bigger. But you know, Legacy East used to kind of feel that way. We used to go to Taco Diner back in 2008, 2009 and sit out on the open patio, and you kind of get the same concept. But I think maybe it was just a mix of how they maybe laid out the apartments and the way the parking garages are there. They're just kind of random because you would, you know, rather than it be like retail on both sides of the street, and then have all the apartments focused upstairs. Like there's those sections in Legacy East where, you know, the apartments are kind of thrown in there in a way that it kind of breaks up the road to some degree. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, either way, this guy knows what he's doing. He's done now. He's involved in 3 of the biggest developments that are within 10 miles of here, and has something figured out. And what's nuts is this last one is like, I'm sure if you told that guy 15 years ago, as he's developing Legacy East and, you know, doing some neat things with stores and some apartments, but like, hey, in 15 years, the headquarters of the PGA and Universal Studios are going to be anchors in a development you're going to be a principal in. You know, it's like, what? Like, you know, I'm sure there's just, I don't care who you are, there has to be times when he sits back and be like, this is pretty crazy.
You know, what's ironic with that is that a lot of times these developments are planned that ahead of time, right? Before the public knows about them. Like, you know, a lot of like, when I got into real estate, and I might have said this before, but 2004, you know, happened to be introduced to a couple of different developers who were talking about the transactions that took place, you know, at like where Stonebriar Mall is. And, you know, the turf wars back in the day between like the Perot family, the Hunt family, you know, Jerry Jones and all the way up to all the way up to the border of Oklahoma. Like all these plots of land were already
accounted for,
entitled, you know, like, they had it mapped out. And I mean, we're talking 21 years ago now. So, you know, it is pretty amazing to think about it. Like that's how far ahead some of these things take time.
Do you know something that we don't over in downtown Terrell? Is that why you just picked up a building in downtown Terrell?
I hope so. I hope so.
They're running a tollway right by it. And you're like, you know what, Landon, I know you don't see the vision yet, but here in 20 years, you've seen Legacy West, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. You never know.
Hope so.
It can happen. I mean, it's growing out there. How crazy would that be? Is you get there and you get a letter one day.
Well,
like, you know.
When you think about it, like from and you know what? That's actually a good observation because right now, well, to be honest, I don't know where it would end up, but like if you think about it right now, George Bush ends into I-30, and it hasn't continued into I-20 yet on that side of the Metroplex. But on the west side, it has. So it continues all the way down. And then you have that whole tollway that was put in over on the west side of Fort Worth that runs all the way to Cleburne now, right? So like, you know, things like that have happened, you know, over on that side. And you know, it wouldn't surprise me that happens over on the east side at some point. It hasn't happened yet. But right now it's kind of funny, right? If you're going to Terrell, and let's say that we're going from Plano to I-30, you're going to take George Bush all the way to 30, and then you got to jog back east, hit 635, which is obviously 635 has been around for a long time, and take it south to go to 20 or go to 80. And so it would make sense at some point. I haven't really looked into the TxDOT maps or plans, but the George Bush should continue to run
loop
south
around
and connect to at least 20 at some point in time.
Yeah.
So
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool if you were on the forefront of development of the gates of Terrell right downtown. Yeah, that'd be really neat. All right, let's just double check this. Nothing else terribly interesting. Another investor got arrested for cheating people out of money in California. $28 million. So be careful with your investments.
Oh my gosh.
It just kind of seems to, there's a story there's almost a story every week. It seems that someone is getting arrested for either intentionally or unintentionally stealing money from investors or misspending on the light end of things, misspending money and not accounting for it well. So, you definitely want to be careful as you are spending your money out there. I want to get in. We won't get into it now. I think this might be a good sign I saw a story about renting by the room, and we need to get Lawrence on because he's been doing a lot of research into this. He's really big on the idea of maybe doing rent by the room here in Dallas. So I think this is a sign that we need to book Lawrence Cow. And you actually mentioned Lawrence earlier in the episode. If you don't know that's the reason I know Tavis. Lawrence is the reason I know Tavis. I went to college with Lawrence. He's in California. He was investing in the Dallas area. His boots on the ground guy was Tavis. This was like 15 years ago. I started following him on Facebook, and so I knew who he was. And then I moved to town. So about, 3 months ago, Lawrence came to town, and we all went to lunch and had a good time kind of reconnecting with everybody, and Tavis and he, talking again. And it was a lot of fun. So we need to have Lawrence on he's got an amazing story of what's happened to him over the last 5-6 years with his real estate portfolio. So I think renting by the room is this very catchphrasey thing, especially with a lot of the bigger pockets guys online. They're talking a lot about rent by the room. And I kind of just want to dive into it, learn about it, and see if we can get some knowledge in that area. And I think Lawrence might be the person to do it. So we will work towards that. Well, that will be it for today. If you have not, please like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple. Please send this episode to a friend. Go back and find an interview or two that you like. We've done some really good ones recently. Dennis Comstock of Builder Brigade was great. And I know some of his folks that follow him have been listening, and that's a lot of fun. So that we've had a lot of really great interviews with different people in the real estate world. So please go back and find those. Find us on Instagram. I'm Dallas Real Estate Guy. You got Tavis Westbrook, Tavis Westbrook Designs, and then we are on YouTube, the Real Estate Heavyweights. So go find us somewhere, subscribe so you know when we drop something new. Reach out, give us a comment. We would love that, and we would love to connect with you. And until next time, have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in.